The last time the world saw Prince Louie, the cameras were rolling, the crowd was cheering, and yet something was off. So small you could miss it if you blinked. A child who normally moved like a spark suddenly stood like a statue, eyes fixed on nothing, as if he'd been told, "Don't react, don't smile, don't breathe too loud." But what happened next changed everything, because that was the final public frame of him, ever. The next morning, the palace schedule looked normal, the headlines looked normal, the monarchy looked polished and steady. And then one detail started whispering through the noise. Louis wasn't on the list. Not resting, not staying home, not feeling unwell, just not there. So the question wasn't where was he? The real question was, why did nobody dare say his name out loud? Because when a royal disappears, it's never sudden. It's staged. It's edited. It's a slow fade engineered behind curtains. And the first sign is always the same: silence that feels too expensive to be accidental. Who decided the silence? And what did it cost? And if you're still here, good. Because this is the exact point where most people click away, right before the details start getting uncomfortable. So do one thing for yourself. Subscribe, not as a favor, but so you don't miss what the palace won't explain twice. Tap like if you felt that tension in your chest, and turn on the bell, because the next parts don't arrive loudly, they arrive quietly, and you'll want them the second they drop. Then came the footage people replayed like a crime scene, slow motion, zoomed in, frame by frame. The balcony moment, the stiff shoulders, the clenched hands, the way his body leaned away from the sound, away from the crowd, away from the life he was supposed to inherit in tiny pieces. Was it fear? Exhaustion? A warning? Or was someone standing just off camera sending a message without words? And here's where it turns darker. Because in the days that followed, there wasn't just an absence, there was a pattern. A school event with only 2 children photographed. A family appearance where the camera angle conveniently cropped the missing space. A press release that spoke in circles, privacy, protected time, best interest. But protected from what? And protected by whom? No one was prepared for what followed. Because social media did what palaces hate most, it started counting. Counting appearances, counting days, counting the exact moments the royal machine usually uses to reassure the public. And every time the Wales family appeared, the same invisible shadow stood beside them, the shape of a child who should have been there. So what would make the palace risk that kind of public alarm? And then, quietly, almost insultingly, the palace broke its silence. Not with emotion, not with warmth. With a statement so clean it felt cold. A statement that didn't confirm the fear, but didn't kill it either. A statement that sounded like it was written by lawyers who had been awake for 3 nights, choosing words like they were disarming a bomb. Why would a child require legal language? This was never meant to go public, but people inside royal circles began hinting at something they wouldn't name directly. Not accusations, just careful suggestions, whispers about a decision, whispers about a protected environment, whispers about what's best for the institution, and that last word, institution, is where the truth begins to rot. Because what happens when what's best for a child clashes with what's best for a crown? And then one day, a parent at the school gates noticed something strange. The usual smiles from staff were gone, replaced by tight faces and eyes that wouldn't meet anyone's gaze. What were they told not to say? In the monarchy, the most terrifying phrase is not bad news, it's no comment. Because no comment isn't an answer. It's a locked door. And locked doors mean something is inside, something you're not allowed to witness. So what exactly was happening behind that door? Some say it began with exhaustion, overstimulation, pressure, the relentless choreography of public life forcing a child to perform a role before he even understood it. Others quietly suggest a health concern, nothing scandalous, just serious enough to change everything. But then you hear the third version, the one nobody states directly. only implies with careful pauses that it wasn't about health alone, it was about control. And if control was involved, who was losing it? Picture this, a palace corridor at night. No tourists, no cameras, only the soft hum of lights and the distant echo of footsteps. A staff member carries a folder, not thick, not dramatic, just a folder. But it's held like it's heavy. It contains a decision that will haunt someone for decades. And on the front, a stamp, not readable, not photographed. Just enough to make you wonder, was that folder for Louie or about Louie? Because here's what people forget. When the palace moves, it moves like an organism. Security shifts first, then staff schedules, then public appearances. Then, finally, the story that the public is allowed to hear. So if Louie vanished from the public, what moved first behind the scenes? A royal watcher pointed out something tiny. A routine charity engagement was suddenly rescheduled. No reason, no details. Another noticed an unusual increase in security presence at a private entrance. Men who looked like they weren't there for ceremony. A photographer described a moment where a car left at speed, not emergency speed, not chaos, but purpose speed. Someone wanted to arrive before anyone could ask questions. Arrive where? And then there was the strangest detail of all. The palace didn't flood the media with distractions. No staged, smiling photos. No "here's the family baking cookies" PR. No comforting little updates. Nothing. That's not how modern royalty behaves when it wants you to stop speculating. So why weren't they trying to calm the panic? Unless calming the panic would require lying too clearly. And some lies are too risky because they can be proven false later. So they chose a safer option, silence. But silence creates its own monster. And that monster has one appetite: the truth. Now imagine being inside that family. One child learning duty like a script. One child learning poise like armor. And the youngest, once the symbol of spontaneity, suddenly turned into a missing page in a story the palace kept reprinting. What kind of decision turns a child into an edit? People started rewatching old clips, not because they wanted drama, but because they wanted evidence. They noticed the last moments where Louie looked tired in a way children usually aren't. Not sleepy tired. Not long day tired. More like carrying something. And then the comments changed from jokes to worry, because the world recognized that look. The look of someone who has been told something that they can't fully understand but can feel. What was he told? And then came the moment that truly twisted the knife. When the palace finally spoke, it didn't feel like a reassurance. It felt like a boundary. A clean line drawn across the public's curiosity. Do not cross. But why draw a boundary unless people are close to something real? Some royal observers began hinting at a permanent adjustment. Not temporary. Not a break. A reshaping of how Louie would exist in public life, if at all. And once that idea enters the room, the air changes. Because you start asking a question that sounds impossible, until history reminds you it isn't. Has the monarchy ever hidden someone before? And that's where the story gets uncomfortable. Because yes, history is full of royal figures protected, relocated, quietly removed from view for their own good. Sometimes it's compassion, sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's reputation management disguised as care. But in every case, there's one constant: the public learns the truth too late. So what timeline are we on right now? Now here's the controversy, without accusing anyone. If a child needs privacy, that's human. That's understandable. But if a palace uses privacy as a shield, then privacy becomes a weapon. And when a weapon is used, it's used against something. Against the press? Against the public? Or against the child's future? Because protected time away sounds gentle, until you realize it can also mean something else. A life being rewritten without consent. A childhood being relocated into controlled spaces. A personality being trained out of someone. A problem being solved quietly. But solved for whom?
People close to royal life, again, no direct claims, just careful suggestions, have long said the institution has one sacred priority: stability. Not happiness, not freedom,
stability. And stability demands predictability. So what happens when the youngest royal is unpredictable in a way that can't be choreographed? Because Louis wasn't just a child. He was a symbol the public adored, genuine, messy, real. And real is dangerous in a world built on appearances. So ask yourself, did he disappear because something was wrong, or because he was too real for the machine? Then something else happened, quietly, something most people didn't notice until it was pointed out. A certain kind of rumor stopped being denied, not confirmed, just left alone. And in royal PR,
What's left alone is often what can't be fought without drawing blood. So what rumor was the palace afraid to touch? And if you're expecting a neat answer, don't. Because the most believable royal scandals are the ones wrapped in enough truth to feel inevitable. Maybe it was health. Maybe it was stress. Maybe it was safety. Maybe it was a private family choice. But then explain this. Why did the palace's wording feel like it was protecting more than a child? Because when they said best interest, it read like a compromise. A compromise implies conflict, and conflict implies sides. So who was on which side? Now imagine the room where the decision was made. Not dramatic shouting, not tabloid theatrics. A quiet table, a silent pause after a doctor's sentence, a mother staring at the floor,
a father staring at the wall, an aide waiting for instructions like a machine. And somewhere in that silence, the monarchy choosing what kind of truth the world could handle. But what kind of truth makes adults go silent like that? And here's the part that makes your stomach tighten. If the palace truly believed this was only about protection, why did it feel like removal? Why did it feel like erasure? Why did it feel like the world was being trained to forget his place in the picture? Because forgetting is a strategy. First, the public gets used to absence. Then the absence becomes normal. Then the name becomes rare. Then the story becomes untouchable. Then one day, you're told it was always this way. So, are we watching that strategy unfold in real time? And just when the speculation reached its peak,
a new question landed like a blade. If Louis is protected, why do we see no harmless proof of life? No simple human reassurance that doesn't reveal location, doesn't reveal details, doesn't violate privacy? A sentence, a smile, a small update. Why not even that? Unless even a small update risks revealing a larger truth. Unless the truth isn't just private. Unless it's complicated. And complicated truths are the ones that split families, split institutions, split futures. So what complication could be big enough to make the palace choose total silence? Now listen, this is where the story becomes less about a child and more about power. Because the monarchy doesn't fear scandal the way you think it does. It can survive scandal. What it cannot survive is uncertainty. The sense that the public is watching the crown lose control. And right now, the public is watching an empty space where a child used to stand. So the biggest question isn't, where is Louis? It's, what did his absence prevent the world from seeing? And that brings us to the final, haunting possibility. Again, not an accusation, just a question no one wants to ask. What if this wasn't a disappearance? What if it was a decision? And the decision wasn't made because something happened to him, but because something was happening around him. Because in every royal story, the darkest truths are never shouted. They're whispered, they're signed, they're filed,
they're sealed. And the people involved don't act like villains. They act like adults doing what's necessary. But necessary for who? So here's what we know in this dramatized world. A child vanished from the public eye. The palace spoke in code. The silence became policy, and the empty space became a message. But what we don't know is the only thing that matters. A respected child behavior specialist later replayed that balcony footage frame by frame, and what she suggested made the room go quiet. Not because it was sensational, because it was specific. She pointed to the withdrawal, the way Louis's gaze didn't lock onto anything, the way his shoulders sat too high for a child who usually bounced with energy, the tiny fidgets that didn't look playful. They looked like self-soothing, not restless, not bored, more like bracing. So the question became impossible to avoid. Was this just a shy moment, or the first visible crack in something far bigger? She described it as retreating inward, the kind of emotional shutdown you sometimes see when a child is overwhelmed but forced to stay present. The posture wasn't relaxed, it was contained, like he'd been instructed to keep the chaos inside.
And the most unsettling part wasn't what he did, it was what he didn't do. No spontaneous glance, no playful reaction, no spark, just a stillness that felt rehearsed. And if a child is rehearsing stillness, what happened behind the scenes that made stillness feel safer than being himself? But it wasn't only Louis that people started watching after that. It was Catherine. To most viewers, she looked composed, smiling, graceful, perfectly placed in the choreography of monarchy. But when the footage slowed down, there was a moment so brief you could miss it unless you were hunting for it. Her eyes flicked toward Louis, not with that proud, there he is warmth, but with something sharper, something searching. A mother's glance